The sun had barely cleared the ridge when I noticed the first signs. My irrigation valves were dry, my fields parched, and the main line leading to my farm's reservoir had been tapped. At first, I thought it was a mistake, a contractor, a mix-up. But the evidence was too precise, too deliberate. Whoever had done this knew exactly what they were taking and why. The trail led straight to the gates of Willow Creek Estates, the so-called model community, run by HOA president Karen Steele. She had that perfect smile, always hovering somewhere between sweet and venomous. But today, there was no smiling, just the glare from across her manicured lawns as I watched her crew finish installing a massive new sprinkler system, one that wasn't supposed to exist. My water, all of it, diverted. I walked the fence line, cane in hand, boots sinking into dust, and muttered under my breath, "So this is how it begins." Neighbors peeked from behind hedges, some sheepish, some worried, all silent. I'd been at this farm longer than most of them had been alive. I knew every inch of soil, every inch of pipe, and I knew someone had crossed a line that couldn't be ignored. The first confrontation was brutal in its subtlety. I called Karen's office, calm as a man whose patience had run dry. "Karen, your new water line is illegal, and it's mine. Cut it off." There was a pause, a shallow inhale, then that practiced corporate cool dripping from her tone. "Mr. Hayes, I assure you, Willow Creek Estates has every right to manage its own irrigation. Your farm, well, it's a private matter. I suggest we avoid unnecessary conflict." Conflict. That word made me smile. Unnecessary? Only for her. The next day I walked my fields, noting every crop that drooped, every valve that hissed emptily. My old pump whined like a wounded animal, the flow weaker than it should be. I pulled out my phone, sent a message to Mark Jensen, an old county water inspector who owed me a favor. "Mark, it's worse than we thought. They've tapped my main line. Need backup." Mark's reply was simple. "Be careful. HOA types don't play fair. Meet you tonight at the pump station." That night, under a crescent moon, we inspected the valves. Sure enough, a hidden tap had been added, the junction disguised with new fittings and concrete dust. Whoever had done this was professional, or at least confident. And that's when I realized something. Karen Steele hadn't just stolen water. She'd sent a message. She wanted to control my farm, my land, and my life. I leaned against the rusty pump, watching the water drip slowly from a broken valve. My mind began calculating, not with anger, but with strategy. I knew one thing. If Karen thought she could hijack a farmer's livelihood without consequences, she'd never understand the lesson I was about to teach her. By the end of that night, I had a plan. Not petty revenge, not a lawsuit first. Something bigger, something she wouldn't see coming until the taps ran dry on her side. The war had started. I didn't sleep much that night. Instead, I walked the perimeter of my farm, listening to the faint hum of pumps and the whisper of the wind through my dying corn. Karen Steele thought she had won, but she didn't understand one thing. I didn't need power, money, or influence to win. I had something stronger: time, knowledge, and the law on my side. The first step was infiltration. I needed proof, evidence that the HOA had illegally tapped into my supply and was profiting from it.
With Mark's help, we traced the diversion lines to a concealed valve buried beneath Karen's decorative stone fountain, a sophisticated bypass connected directly to my reservoir. Fancy, expensive, and entirely unauthorized. I took photos, mapped every inch of the illegal connection, and kept a detailed log. Then I waited. Karen's confidence made her careless. Within a week, the HOA board held a meeting to discuss the new upgrades. I wasn't invited, of course, but I knew someone on the inside. Lila, a young HOA secretary who had grown tired of Karen's tyranny. She sent me scanned copies of board minutes, approval for water diversion, budget allocations for emergency aesthetic maintenance, and memos explicitly naming Karen as the orchestrator. I smiled at the irony. The woman who micromanaged everyone's landscaping had managed to micromanage her own downfall without realizing it. Next, I made my move. Not with lawyers yet, not with threats, but with leverage. I visited Clearflow Utilities, a small regional water company struggling to compete with larger distributors. The owner, a retired engineer named Carl, greeted me with suspicion until I laid it out plainly. Carl, buy me in. Give me control. I don't want the company to fail. I want to make sure water flows to the right hands and stops flowing to the wrong ones. He hesitated. You're serious? I said, deadly serious. By the following week, the sale was approved. I was now the majority stakeholder. A man who had spent his life watching crops wilt now held the keys to every line in the county, including Karen Steele's stolen fountain. The first public test was subtle but devastating. Clearflow issued a new drought management notice across the county. All non-essential irrigation, fountains, ornamental lawns, artificial streams, would be restricted until notice further. Karen's HOA fell squarely under this category. The backlash was immediate. Emails, phone calls, frantic board meetings. Residents panicked as their prized fountain and perfectly trimmed grass went dry. Karen fumed, storming the HOA office in a fit of rage. But every time she called or tried to manipulate the county, she hit a wall. Clearflow's policies were legal, transparent, and signed by the proper authorities. That night, I watched from my porch, sipping coffee, the lights of Willow Creek Estates dimming one by one as their sprinklers failed. I didn't feel revenge. I felt justice and satisfaction. The next morning, Karen tried a bold move. She contacted a contractor to bypass the meters. Predictably, it failed. I had already installed automatic shutoff valves on every line connected to her property. When the contractor tampered with the meter, the system locked down instantly and sent alerts to the sheriff. Within 20 minutes, deputies arrived at her gates. By midday, her HOA meeting was in chaos. Half the board members resigned. Residents were furious, demanding answers, demanding refunds for mismanaged water fees. Karen tried to rally them, tried to spin the story, but the proof was undeniable. She had authorized the theft herself. As the sun set, I walked my fields, the irrigation humming steadily, crops drinking freely. The irony was sweet. Karen had tried to control my farm, and now I controlled the flow to hers. The seed of her downfall had been planted months ago, and it was finally blooming. The battle lines were clear. Karen Steele versus Jose Hayes, farmer and newly crowned flowmaster. And this was only the beginning.
Karen Steele didn't give up easily. She tried lawsuits, calls to the mayor, even hired a hotshot lawyer from the city promising to take me down. I laughed. Let him come. I had documentation, logs, photos, and sworn statements from board members and contractors.
illegal valves, unauthorized diversion, proof stacked like a brick wall. The HOA tried sabotage next. One night, Karen's team attempted to hack Clearflow's network to override the drought restrictions. Amateur hour. The system was mirrored across multiple servers, fully encrypted, with automatic lockdown protocols. When they tried, the flow shut off completely, not just for them, but for the entire HOA zone. Panic ensued. The sheriff and state water inspectors were on site within the hour. Karen's fingerprints were all over the incident. Public opinion flipped fast. Local news outlets, once neutral, began covering the story in detail. HOA president under investigation for water theft and sabotage. Residents who had once cheered Karen now demanded her resignation. The HOA board had no choice. They suspended her pending investigation. Greg, her VP, resigned quietly. The empire she had built on stolen water was crumbling. Meanwhile, I consolidated my control. Clearflow Utilities prioritized real needs: farms, essential businesses, fire hydrants, emergency services. Karen's HOA got a taste of their own medicine. Lawns brown, fountains silent, water bills doubled, flow quotas slashed. Every attempt to cheat or bypass the system triggered instant shutoffs. The humiliation was public and relentless. I wasn't cruel. I was precise. Justice, I decided, should be measured, not vindictive. Yet it was satisfying watching Karen scramble to maintain her image while her own neighbors questioned her competence. Then came the final blow. At the County Water Authority hearing, Karen tried to sue for unfair targeting. I brought Emily Watson to testify. She presented board minutes, invoices, and memos, all signed by Karen, all detailing the illegal water diversion. Karen's lawyer tried to object, but the judge wasn't having it. By the end of the day, Karen lost completely. The judge recommended criminal investigation for fraud and unauthorized utility tampering. The headlines the next morning were savage. HOA queen of water theft defeated by local farmer. Karen's reputation was ruined. Residents left Crescent Meadows, selling homes cheaply. Developers bulldozed dead lawns and fountains, replacing them with sustainable gardens. The HOA dissolved. The land was reborn as Willow Bend's sustainable community, fully under Clearflow's equitable water distribution. Months later, I drove past what was once Karen's prized lawn. She was there, kneeling with a watering can, trying to revive what was long gone. Her fountain dismantled, grass dead, HOA sign peeling. I smiled, not with cruelty, but with finality. Some lessons can't be taught. They must be experienced. Clearflow thrived. Farmers flourished. Communities learned fairness could be profitable. Water was no longer a weapon, but a resource managed responsibly. And me? I went back to my fields, the hum of irrigation lines like a lullaby, knowing that justice, like water, always finds its level. One afternoon, Karen's lawyer sent a final letter, $5,000 enclosed, for the trouble caused. I deposited it directly into the Willow Bend Community Fund, not for revenge, but for restoration. The county recognized my fair use model, dubbing it the Hayes Standard. Communities followed suit, prioritizing essential water needs over vanity landscaping. And every time I passed Willow Bend, I saw children planting gardens, sprinklers running only when necessary, and the faint glimmer of justice in every green shoot. I tipped my hat to the horizon, whispered to the land, and said, "Balance restored." Some fights aren't about winning. They're about making sure the next generation has water to grow. And this time, it flowed where it belonged.
Every neighborhood has its secrets, and every Karen leaves her mark. If you love true HOA stories like this, make sure to watch more on our channel, and don't forget to subscribe for more real-life neighborhood drama. Thank you.